Welcome back everyone to Gotcha Interact. Today we're going to be talking about the first half of the 5.5 banners today. Now we've gotten past a little bit of Natlan, so let's go ahead and talk about Varesa and Xianyun going on these next few banners, looking at the characters and the weapons, seeing if either one of these is a good pulling option for you. So let's go ahead and jump right into the video. So the first character we do want to talk about is Varesa. Now Varesa is a little bit of a different character than we probably normally see. If anything, we're actually jumping back into a quote-unquote jumping or plunging meta, if you will, with her and her kit. Now, looking at her kit, we've already kind of actually done a deep dive into what she's actually already done previously. I'll go ahead and throw that up at the top of the screen just so you guys can see that. But looking at that video, if you want to know a little bit more about her kit, she has had a few changes, but it's more like damage multipliers and whatnot. It's not anything crazy that's changed about her kit. So if you guys do want to watch that video and understand more about her kit, you can. In a very basic sense with her, obviously she is a Natlan character, so she does have the Night Soul mechanic in her. And you're basically gonna just be doing a bunch of charge attacks and a lot into then going into plunge attacks. Most of your damage is then coming from those plunge attacks. Yeah, obviously that skill is giving you your Night Soul Blessing state, and even doing some other things as well, helping you just do more damage. Then the burst is just another great help to just do even bigger damage hit initially, and then also goes and throws you into the apex drive state, which is allowing you to ignore an elemental burst cooldown and then consume less energy to do a special elemental burst, and then also gives you some interruption resistance. So there's just a lot of things that her kit kind of does, but once again, we're kind of following this plunge team kind of idea, which is really nice why she's being paired with Xianyun. And speaking of Xianyun, Rift, what do we have to see about her and looking at her on this banner?
Absolutely. So quickly going over Xianyun, what she kind of does, if you don't already know, Xianyun is a plunge support. She definitely helps out. Formerly, when she released, characters like Xiao were kind of the big talk. A new character around the same time was Gaming, and really opening up other characters to be able to plunge, because through her burst, she allows your active character to jump really high, much like Xiao or Gaming that can already do that on their own and be able to plunge. So she had opened up a lot of really fun, new tryout kind of teams that a lot of people enjoyed. And now that we're getting a new character in Varesa, who is also dedicated to doing plunge type of damage, Xianyun being right here with her, like you said, Vixen, is going to be a really interesting pair up, and probably going to be right off the bat one of Varesa's best in slot supports, give or take. Looking at her skill, Xianyun is going to enter her Cloud Transmogrification state, in which she will not take fall damage, and she'll use what's called Skyladder once. While she's in this state, her plunging attack will be converted into Drift Cloud Wave instead, which when you do use that, she kind of looks like a little crane or a bird, and she kind of goes into a dive. And you can see that if you've seen gameplay of her, or you have her and you've done that before. You can actually use her skill up to 3 times and then go into that dive right there at the end for Skyladder. And each time you use that skill before going into the dive, you will deal more damage. Like I already stated with the burst, when you use Xianyun's burst, you will be able to then jump really high with any of your active characters. This does include Xianyun herself. But when you do initially use it, you're going to deal some AoE animo damage. But the other thing you're going to do is heal all of your nearby characters based on Xianyun's attack. So she is a healer as well for your team that does scale on her attack, making her pretty useful for a team if you're already using her as a support, obviously to help your plunge character. Let's just say it is Varesa in this case. So you're using Xianyun. Is going to help increase Varesa's plunge damage, but she's also going to be your team's healer. And the other cool thing about Xianyun in this case, I'll just mention this real quick, is that being an animo character, she can run something like Viridescent. So once again, just a great in-slot support for Varesa. As far as everything that Xianyun brings to the table that should be mentioned, that's really it. She will deal some off-field damage that does continuously follow the active character, also with the burst called that Star Waker. So as you do these plunge attacks, they will be accompanied by the coordinated attack that does animo damage.
Have you or a loved one been a victim to the losing to Chi-Chi syndrome? If so, you are qualified for benefits from today's sponsor, Lootbar. Lootbar is an online top-up platform that allows you to purchase Genesis crystals for a cheaper price than you see in-game. The main reason Lootbar is safe to use is because they only need your UID and what server you play on. This way, those emails and passwords are completely safe. If you do happen to have any possible issues, Lootbar is 24/7 live chat support that you can use to fix any problems you may have. Lootbar also supports plenty of other games and in-game currencies besides just Genshin Impact, so go ahead and check out those other games that Lootbar supports. Your delivery is guaranteed within 30 minutes of purchase, and usually we've seen it within a couple of minutes, sometimes even 30 seconds. There are plenty of other creators that have and still do endorse Lootbar, including ourselves, so if you need some extra credibility, here you go. But do you need to see a little bit more than a few sponsored ads? Go ahead and check out the almost 30,000 reviews that Lootbar has on their site. So what are you waiting for today? Go ahead and check the links in the description or the pinned comment to check out Lootbar today and start saving. Thank you again for Lootbar for sponsoring this video, and now back to the video. Looking a little bit beyond kind of the idea of the characters, what they're going to be doing, let's go ahead and talk about specifically looking at some questions in our summary section. And the first question we always look at is, do you actually need either character on your account? Personally, for me, looking at both these characters, I really do like both the characters. I was a Xiao main from the beginning of the game, or well, whenever he released, that is. And so I've always loved Xiao. I've loved playing with him for a very long time. At the same time, and obviously getting Xianyun, so I really do like Xianyun, and I'll jump on Xianyun first because she's going to be the support. The great thing about Xianyun is obviously, like you said, Rift, it's not only just opening up those teams for like, other, just specifically like those characters that do damage for plunge, because she increases the damage of the plunge damage, or what, she kind of increases that and helps those characters, and it's like, okay, that's great, especially once you get the weapon as well, it makes even more sense. So that's fantastic, that's awesome. But what if they can't plunge? Well, that's what the great thing is with her burst, allowing them to plunge. Never mind, on top of that, she's a solid support, like you said, that was using Varesa, and also using with the burst and having the Star Worker hit off field, Varesa can still proc. And so a lot of other teams and a lot of other characters, like Hu Tao, for instance, got a lot of love from that. And being paired with another character like Farina, who made drained HP, also kind of went against the effects that Xianyun was doing, even healing in her burst as well. Keeping Hu Tao to maybe a little bit of a lower HP, still pretty high, but still, there's definitely a lot of great things that Xianyun has done for plenty of other characters. And yeah, Xiao definitely took a lot of advantage to it. Gaming, obviously, considering he was the 4-star and he's a really good character. Hu Tao took a lot of advantage to it, and plenty of other characters even do to this day, and even some characters like Navia and whatnot. But overall, kind of beyond her as a character, looking at Xianyun, you actually have to look at the other piece of the puzzle, which is those damaged characters. And while Plunge is great, you really kind of want to have that specific dedicated character for them. And here obviously we have the dedicated damage dealer, which is going to be Varesa. Now Xiao definitely is a very strong character, but looking at Varesa here, her multipliers are absolutely insane. Never mind your pairing on top of that, a lot of easily to get crit possibly with maybe some of the old sets from Natlan, or maybe possibly some newer sets that are coming out and releasing, increasing possible plunging damage bonus. There's just so much great, kind of opportunities that have allowed, plunge characters to kind of actually come into the meta here, or at least weave their way back in a little bit. So overall, looking at that, I think that Varesa is a good pull, especially if you don't have an Electro unit. She is an Electro character, so it does make sense if you don't have another Electro character, then getting her is a good idea. If you have Xianyun already, I would definitely highly suggest going after Varesa as well, just kind of pairing things together with them. On the other hand, if you already have some pretty strong Electro characters, I'm not crazy sure that Varesa is really necessary. Plenty of a lot of other Electro characters in the game definitely do their job and do it extremely well, even at all types of content in the game. Same thing can really be said about most elements, so honestly, I wouldn't really see that she's the necessity there. And as much as I like Xianyun, it is still quote-unquote very niche to just have, for instance, the Hu Tao plunge, or a Diluc plunge, or a Navia plunge, or whatnot. Those characters can still work in their normal regular teams and other teams as well that have come out, so I wouldn't really say that either of these characters at the end of the day, though, are really necessary specifically.
Yeah, I think you stated it pretty well. My thought for Xianyun is, like you just said, if you don't have basically Xiao, or you're not planning to pull Varesa, then you can get away with saving. Like, it's not going to be a game-changing thing for your account to pull Xianyun when you don't already have Xiao and you're not planning to go for Varesa. I can say that because I don't have Xiao, and, well, Varesa's not here yet, so... But I have Xianyun, and I've used her for lots of those fun things, like you mentioned Hu Tao. I definitely used her with Gaming. I've even done some weird stuff with Xinyan. I don't own Navia. Thing is, with these other teams that, Xianyun can be slotted in and make a really fun and a good team, the thing is, a lot of these DPSs that can use Xianyun, it's not quite their actual best-in-slot team. Hu Tao's best-in-slot team doesn't use Xianyun. And I'm pretty sure, correct me if I'm wrong, Vixen, Navia's best in slot team doesn't use Xianyun. Now, it's a very
Hmm.
powerful variant, a close second or third or something like that. But once again, if you're going for best in slot Navia team because you love your Navia, you're like top 1% Navia or whatever, Xianyun's not part of that equation, but she definitely can be. So at the end of the day, like Vixen stated very well, in my opinion, kind of edging towards the niche side, kind of like a Nilu or a Shenhe type of kind of pull on your account, unless you are
Right.
planning to go for Varesa. But moving into our next question, we ask, what kinds of teams are you trying to build? And so building kind of off of that first question of the general value of the character, you have to also ask yourself, well, what am I even trying to, go for in Genshin Impact? What team am I looking at? That all bases on a lot of what DPSs you're pulling, because as Vixen always states, kind of his philosophy on how you play the game is you pull the DPS you like, or whatever that favorite DPS is, and then you build around that character because you like that character. Now, you can pull supports because you just like the supports. Plenty of people were that way with Shenhe, and then she finally got a rerun. There's many other characters like that. So definitely you can do that too. But I think one of the most rewarding ways to play a game is pulling one of your favorite DPSs and then building around that. You get a lot of good reward for doing that, and the game becomes really fun because of it. And of course, not saying there's any wrong way to play the game. That's just like some of our personal takes on how to get the most out of the game for us personally. So let's say you are looking at Varesa, you want this new character. She is a DPS. She's even got a new artifact set coming out. So if you're a newer player, you can be looking forward to that. Even older players, though, it's going to be a fresh take on something a little new. Now, obviously, we've had plunge characters before. I mean, Zhao's been in the game for almost forever, right? But this is going to kind of add something fresh, maybe more powerful, and that'll definitely be a lot of fun. So if you're going to pull Varesa, maybe think about pulling Xianyun. I would definitely imagine that Xianyun's going to be one of the best in slot supports. Now, that's not to say you have to pull Xianyun for Varesa. I think Varesa's obviously going to have a lot of good teams that don't actually involve Xianyun, and I know there's going to be a player base out there that want to know what that is, because not everyone wants to pull Xianyun for Varesa. So there's definitely a case to be made about that. Now, obviously, like Vixen stated, if you already have Electro characters on your account, specifically Raiden, Sino, especially Cloran, then that pulling factor or team building isn't going to make sense for pulling Varesa. Varesa's not going to be in the same team as these other characters. You're going to be building your team around Varesa, and that's what you'd be focusing on. As an Electro character, I would imagine that doing some Quicken teams would be pretty interesting. That's something I'm personally interested in. I don't know how that's going to stand in comparison to someone like Cloran, because Cloran just does really well with a team like that. Also, Sino, who's literally designed for that. There's also a case to be made for Overload. But once again, I think Cloran really has top notch right there, as well as Raiden does pretty good in that team. But I think we all know that Cloran is being the newer, or the most new actually, DPS before Varesa in the Electro department. If you already have Cloran, my point is, think twice about Varesa and maybe look at other elements on your account or something like that. And obviously with Xianyun, the teams you're building there is a plunge specific team. The whole reason you're going to have Xianyun in a team is because you want your DPS, whoever that may be, to be able to plunge now and do some plunge damage, whether or not that is a plunge dedicated character like Gaming Zhao or Varesa herself. The idea with that is to plunge, whether that's Navia. You can even do some weird stuff with almost any other Claymore character, to be honest, because they have really good plunging multipliers, and even characters that aren't Claymores that can be a lot of fun with that, like Hu Tao, for example. So when building a team with Xianyun, think plunge. She can also just be used as a healer, even though you're not really focusing on plunge. She is a healer. She does heal the whole team, so that is nice. And as Vixen stated earlier on, can be a nice pair with Farina.
And finally, looking a little bit beyond everything here that we've talked about, let's go ahead and talk about the weapons. Now, obviously, specifically, each of these weapons are going to be specifically tied to the characters, but really what we want to do here is look at these weapons possibly paired in, do you actually need the weapon for the character, and then what if you accidentally get this weapon, because it definitely can happen. So looking at the first weapon, Vivid Notions, we're going to be looking at Varesa's weapon. These are both going to be stated at R1. It states that the attack is increased by 28%. When you use a plunging attack, you will gain the Dawn's First Hue effect. Plunging attack crit damage is then increased by 28%. Also, when you use an elemental skill or elemental burst, you will gain the Twilight Splendor effect, increasing crit damage, plunging attack crit damage specifically, by 40%. The two effects above will each last for 15 seconds and then will be cancelled zero point 0.1 seconds after the ground impact hits a target. So overall, if you use basically just do a plunging attack itself or use a skill and burst at the same time, you're actually getting the 28 plus the 40%, so you're getting 68% crit damage for your plunging attacks, and you already have the 28% attack increase anyways. With the weapon being a 674 base attack, a very high base attack already, with 44.1% crit damage, it actually kind of gives itself the meaning, considering she's doing plunging attacks all the time. Even if we just add the 28% crit damage from the initial part, she's instantly already at like 78, basically almost at those 88% crit damage weapons that usually have a pretty low base attack. So already this weapon is very, very good, never mind getting the extra 40% on top of that as well. So I think a very good weapon, obviously, for her. It is her personal weapon, so it makes sense. And it's a very balanced weapon, if anything, almost a little bit of cracked weapon. But if we look a little bit into maybe some other characters, really looking at other characters that are catalysts specifically, it's a little bit more difficult to find plunge attack units that are going to want to actually do that. Obviously, technically, Xianyun has the ability to kind of become a DPS for herself. I don't know if really C6ing your Xianyun, because then she kind of becomes a DPS, is really a good idea to get off of her weapon, because she still does give herself some pretty good damage bonuses in it. But I do think that, I guess technically, if you really wanted to, try to make your Xianyun at any constellation just a DPS, it could work. My initial thought, though, was Yanfei, because Yanfei, I know, has a lot of interesting, weird kind of playstyles and kits really with her, and you don't really need to use skills or burst to, or well, I guess you kind of do, but it's nothing crazy to really get you in a crazy good state. So even sometimes kind of foregoing those states can allow you to actually do some pretty good damage outside of them. But I don't know, Rift, who do you think that could use this weapon besides Varesa?
Well, like you said, just right off the bat, like there's really no reason to pull this for other things. But I have one of my things that was coming to my mind is I have seen people actually do some really strange meme builds on characters like Barbara and even Kokomi to make her crit and do like really ridiculous plunge vaporize things. And from what I've seen on the internet, at least, guys, maybe some of you guys have seen it too, that they'll do ridiculous damage. I think I saw someone do like a 1 million damage Barbara plunge or whatever, and it was like a vapor, this crazy setup. Obviously, that's not stuff you're gonna do consistently in an Abyss setting or even a theater setting, so definitely wouldn't recommend going after that and thinking, yeah, I'm gonna clear content with something like that. Can be fun to just try out and test if you're that kind of guy. I'm definitely one of those people who just likes to kind of use my characters on my roster and my account as just kind of a sandbox, see what I can play around with, what damage numbers can I hit with certain things. But definitely on a more serious note and value kind of note, do not pull this weapon unless you are going for Varesa, and get Varesa first, because this weapon's really not going to do much on anyone else. Even someone like Xianyun, in my personal opinion, I just wouldn't want this on her. I'd rather put a higher base attack, like her personal weapon, or just another 5-star like Skyward Atlas that has an attack percent stat instead of the crit damage stat, because all that Xianyun really cares about at the end of the day, especially C0, not doing any damage, crazy stuff, she just wants high attack and high ER. So that's just my personal opinion there. But looking at, speaking of Xianyun's weapon, Crane's Echoing Call, now this is her very beautiful catalyst, by the way, but it does have a base attack of 741 and has the attack stat of 16.5% at level 90. Looking at the refinement ability, assuming just one copy of the weapon, it says after the equipping character hits an opponent with a plunging attack, all nearby party members' plunging attacks will deal 28% increased damage for 20 seconds. When nearby party members hit opponents with plunging attacks, they will restore 2.5 energy to the equipping character. Energy can be restored this way every 0.7 seconds, and this energy regain effect can be triggered even if the equipping character is not on the field. So obviously very, very tailored for Xianyun, and in my personal opinion still would be better. I guess, you were kind of talking about DPS Xianyun at C6. I just really cannot get around the fact that you're getting 28% plunging attack damage for just 20 seconds, and it's not going to fluctuate in all, or in any and it's not going to fluctuate in any kind of way. Whereas Varesa's weapon, I think you have to do the skill or the burst, then you get the crit damage bonus, and it only lasts for that one plunging, and I would imagine you have to do it again to get the effect back, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. Whereas here on Xianyun's weapon, it's just, hey, you're going to deal more plunging attack damage for this amount of time, and it's 20 seconds too, so very, very good. And then also getting the energy back, very important for her. If you don't have Xianyun's burst, you are not healing your team, you're not enabling your plunge DPS to actually plunge if they're not a character that can normally do it, like Zhao, for instance. So definitely a good weapon to think about. Now, it's also not required for her. You can definitely get away with the 4-star Favonius Codex just to get all of that energy back. You can give her a little bit of crit rate to help get those white particles back. That's going to be very helpful for not only her, but also the entire team. That kind of goes without saying. So definitely would say you don't have to pull the weapon unless you just really are dedicated to maybe your Zhao or Varesa team. That's where the vertical investment does sit in, and I would say maybe think about getting the weapon, especially now that the weapon banner has been a lot better ever since they changed the fate point system from 2 to 1. It does make more sense to go after a weapon if you start to think about things like that, because now it only takes 160 to guarantee a weapon, whereas before it was 240 to guarantee that, being more expensive than a character before. And now it's actually slightly less expensive to go after a weapon than a character.
Yeah, I definitely think that overall, honestly, both of these catalysts, I know that like at the end of the day, you could just be stuck with accidentally getting Vivid Notions if you don't want to. So that's kind of why we stated, here's some other areas, but it would really not be very good at all if you accidentally got it. So let's hope that if you are going for Xianyun's weapon, you don't get Vivid Notions unless you want it, which is also good. But if you're going for both of the characters, then honestly, it is very helpful to obviously have both the characters work together, and therefore their weapons also work together as well. So technically, accidentally losing is actually in a better position for you, because if you win, then you're on a loss for the next time. So if you're going for both of them, then actually this could be very good. Also, if you already have Xianyun, you accidentally get her weapon, that's also pretty good. So there's plenty of definitely good scenarios that could be here for plenty of other people. So let us know what you guys are getting specifically kind of down below.
Well, we hope that this video could help you decide on whether or not these characters or maybe even these weapons we just talked about coming up on this next banner are for you. As always, if you do have any suggestions that may help other players or just other questions, go ahead and let us know in the comments. Thank you again for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.